Hello everybody, welcome to More Chainsaws Needed, where, because I love horror, thrillers and suspense, I am going to talk, rant, rave about, review and recommend movies, TV series and books in those genres for you guys as I draw. Now that we're back in the saddle, I have a confession to make that will surprise no one. I am a big Supernatural fan. In particular, I am a big Dean Winchester fan, and that is the fault of one Jensen Ackles. And since the boys made everyone and their dog realize that Jensen Ackles is an amazing talented actor, well, I decided it was time to talk of another movie where Mr. Ackles completely stole the show, aka one of the very few movies he made during the 15 years that he was keeping us safe from demons, monsters, and the occasional horny angel. My Bloody Valentine 3D. Before we talk about the 2009 remake, we need to talk about the original My Bloody Valentine, why it came to be, and its influence in horror movies. So please have some patience here. We will get to Jensen Ackles, I swear. The year was 1980 when director George Mihalka was approached by Cineplex Productions to make a slasher movie as part of a two-movie contract. Because at the time the slasher genre was getting very popular, and in particular, holiday serial killers were all the rage, the movie was titled My Bloody Valentine, mostly because it was the one cult holiday that still didn't have a slasher movie. Although I am still waiting for My Bloody Cinco de Mayo, unless the problem is that the killer of that holiday is way too drunk on tequila to actually kill anyone. The movie was released in 1981 to mixed criticism, mostly due to the violence and gore that was pretty extreme for the time. In fact, the movie was quite censored at first, and the uncensored cut was not made available to the public until 2008, and it was only thanks to the remake. When Lionsgate got the rights to make the remake, they also got the home video rights of the original, and were surprised to get a copy with footage that was not found in any other copy of the movie, and yet the DVD they released arguably is still missing some of the gore. But gore or no gore, the movie is still a great horror slasher from the early 80s. But of course, we need to know what the movie was about before we can say that the remake did the original justice, right? So, what is My Bloody Valentine, the original, about? Well, the Canadian minor town of Valentine Bluffs has one very important tradition coming back, which is the Valentine's Day dance. Given the name of the town, it was obvious that Valentine's Day was a big celebration, but the dance itself hadn't been celebrated for almost 20 years after a terrible tragedy had happened. On the last year the dance had been celebrated, two supervisors left their post on the mine to go to the dance, and that caused 5 miners alone in the tunnels to... well, forget they checked the methane levels, the mine exploded and trapped the miners inside. Of the 5, only one of them, Harry Warden, survived. And only because he had to resort to cannibalism and went a little crazy due to his ordeal, not that we blame him. Next year, Harry murdered the 2 supervisors, putting their heads in chocolate heart-shaped box, and while he let himself be arrested, he warned the town that he'd come back to kill more people if they ever held another Valentine dance again. And for that, yes, we could blame him. That was a little bit of an overreaction. 20 years later, the incident had been mostly forgotten, and Harry has been locked in an asylum far away for all this time. So the mayor decides to bring the tradition back. However, much to his shock and surprise, as soon as he announces the dance, he and the police chief received a very gruesome gift, a human heart inside a Valentine chocolate box, with a warning not to hold the dance. And now, it was time to decide if they would heed the warning or just go ahead and ignore it. While My Bloody Valentine failed to launch a horror franchise like Friday the 13th and Halloween, and originally had a lukewarm reception of 5.7 million at the box office, it's still a very solid movie with a very iconic killer. Harry Warden, dressed in a miner outfit complete with mask, holding a pickaxe. It's one of those images that you will always remember once you saw it. And the final twist of the movie? One worth watching for yourselves. So in 2009, when we were in the middle of the remake craze for all horror movies, Lionsgate got Patrick Lussier to direct the remake in glorious 3D. Now, let's be honest. Having to remake a slasher movie is always a difficult thing to do, as the hardcore fans tend to be protective of the original and the general audience might not care much if it's not one of the big ones. But to their credit, Todd Farmer, Shane Smith, and Stephen Miller, who had been a co-writer of the original, gave this remake their best, creating a script that, while was noticeably influenced by the original, was also its own thing, so that if you watched and loved the original film, you could still be surprised. And this is a very important thing when the movie has a final twist. The movie also had a nice cast, starting with, of course, Dean Winchester, Soldier Boy, and so on, Jensen Ackles, as the main role as Tom Hannigan, and Kurt Smith of Dawson's Creek and Final Destination fame as his romantic rival, Axel. Did I say romantic rival? Yes, of course, because this is a Valentine's Day movie, so there is a love triangle in the middle of the plot, and given the Valentine's Day framing, it's actually plot relevant. It's not a plot tumor. While in the original the two characters, named the same by the way, were both minors, in this reimagining Tom is a former minor and Alex is the town sheriff. So what are the plot differences without spoilers? Well, here we start again with a terrible tragedy in a mine during Valentine's Day. Once again, 6 miners are trapped due to an explosion and only one of them survives, a man by the name of Harry Warden. In this case, however, the accident is blamed on Tom Hannigan, the son of the mine's owner, who is said to have forgotten to bend the metal lines, even when that is not quite clear if it was true or not. What is true is that this Harry Warden started early on his killing, as he actually killed the other 5 miners in order to conserve oxygen. So that, this Harry Warden, a little bit crazier than the original. A year later, Harry wakes up from his convenient coma that he was in and starts killing the town people in revenge as he finally arrives to the mine where he attacks Tom, his girlfriend Sarah, and Axel and his girlfriend Irene. While Sarah, Axel, and Irene escape, Tom is left in the mercy of Harry, who is only stopped by the timely arrival of Sheriff Burke, who happens to be horror legend Tom Atkins. Shock me, Sheriff. You don't understand that reference? Don't worry, I will do a video about that later. 10 years later, Tom returns to the town as he wants to sell the mine after his father's death, given his less than happy memory of the place. However, there is also the fact that people are getting killed by a man in miner's gear, and so people are sure that Harry Warden has returned to get revenge on his last target so he can finally have some peace. Let's be honest for a moment here. Slashers have a hard time nowadays because there's not much you can do with the original premise. They have become a bit of a stereotype, and we now even have a franchise that started by deconstructing the whole thing from scratch, Scream by Wes Craven, creator of one of the most popular slasher films, Nightmare on Elm Street. The genre was arguably created by Alfred Hitchcock with Psycho, so it has been around since the 60s. But it was John Carpenter's Halloween in 1978, the one that landed most of the characteristics of the stories, making it pretty much impossible to have a slasher film that was not compared to Halloween for a long time. The fact that many of the early ones were centered around holidays didn't help much either. And yet, My Bloody Valentine did try to make something different, not only with the killings. The original has a very memorable laundromat scene, and also one that may put you off eating hot dogs for a long, long time. But also with the killer motives and a final twist that many people were not expecting. And in fact, some people found a bit disappointing, but I don't want to ruin it for you guys, so if you can hunt My Bloody Valentine 1981 and check it out for yourselves, do so. It didn't work for a franchise, as unfortunately it didn't have enough ticket sales to justify a sequel, but at least the attempt was made. The remake came almost at the tail end of the nostalgic remakes of slashers in the 2000s and had more or less the same luck. No one overly hated it, but it wasn't either very well received, at least not enough to warrant a sequel, despite the fact that every actor here brought their A game. Yes, some critics called uninspiring and with wooden acting, but let's be 100% honest. That is said about every slasher movie because we are used to the cookie-cutter play-by-number serial killer chases teenagers through different buildings and kills everyone but the final girl who happens to be the least annoying of the bunch. And that doesn't require a lot of script or acting. Of course, I have to say that Jensen Ackles acts the hell out of his character, because that's what he always do. I know that a lot of people just came to see him as a serious actor after The Boys, especially since he came from soap opera land. Long before Supernatural, he was in Days of Our Lives, of all things. But at least from Dark Angels onward, sorry, I am not subjecting myself to Days of Our Lives, not even for Jensen. You can see the talent and seriousness in which he took all his roles no matter what. But he was not the only one who was doing his best with the script he was given. Kerr Smith, who is now in Riverdale, of all things, as Principal Honeybee, also gives his all as Axel, the sheriff, who is juggling the demise of his marriage, not just because of his wife's ex-boyfriend Tom coming back to town, but also because he's being unfaithful to her with a girl in the supermarket. But also with the return of the cruelest serial killer his town has ever seen, one who at one point almost killed him and his wife and Tom when they were younger. Does the movie would have benefited from a tighter script? Absolutely. While the twist worked as well as the original twist, and no, the twist is not the same in both movies, so if you enjoyed 1981, you are not going to be spoiled for 2009. It also would have been better if we had a little bit more explanation of why the twist happened, which, ironically, is also something that audience in 1981 said. So yeah, for whenever someone decides to remake My Bloody Valentine, give a bit more background to that twist if you repeat it, please. Perhaps a bit less emphasis on the 3D gimmick? Oh yes, please, and I am so glad that that fad is dying again. Less nudity? It's a slasher film, and slasher films have nudity and gore. It comes with the territory. Although, yes, we need more equal nudity. If girls have to be naked when chased by a serial killer, guys should be too. Just fair. But in the whole, it's a solid remake, and a good popcorn movie for us or our fans to enjoy on a Friday Fright night. If you like slashers, My Bloody Valentine 3D should be in your watchlist. If you like a Jensen Ackles in The Boys, My Bloody Valentine 3D should absolutely be in your watchlist. If you like it Supernatural, well, who am I kidding? If you like it Supernatural, you already watched My Bloody Valentine 3D, but hey, you could watch it again if you want. Seriously though, while it's not the smartest or the goriest slasher you will ever find, both the 1981 movies and the 2009 remake are good entertaining horror movies, which honestly deserved a bit more recognition in their time and maybe a sequel. And who knows? Perhaps as more people watch them, they will one day get a new remake that does get a sequel. Also, seriously, it is a very good example of how to make a good remake, because as I said, the 2009 respects the spirit of the original, but doesn't copy it step by step. It does their own thing. Let me know if you watch them, and please come back and tell me what you thought. I want to thank my dear patrons, Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, Jessica, and Ellie Riley, as well as my first supporter Tanya Pineda and the most amazing Amy Song, without whom none of my videos would be possible. I also want to remind you that if you want to support this and my other projects and get your name mentioned here, you can do so at patreon.com/Adalisa, written link on my link tree on description, as I know my name can be hard to spell. And with just $1 a month, you will always be thanked in my videos, as well as to get access to a ton of art before anyone else, and get the chance to suggest future subjects for videos. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscriptions to the channel, comments so that the algorithm catches engagement, and of course, you sharing the links. I will also welcome all your questions, feedbacks, and suggestions in the comments below. This was Adalisa Zarate, and remember, there is not a problem in the horror genre that can't be solved with more chainsaws.